Elena stood in the center of the grand hall, her hands trembling over the small curve of her belly. The twins inside her had been still all morning, as though they too could sense the danger in the air. Around her, the court whispered. Above her, on his high stone throne, sat Damien, the Alpha King, his golden eyes cold and distant, refusing to meet hers. "You conspired against the crown," the royal advisor, Lord Set, declared, holding up a sealed letter with her name signed at the bottom. "This is proof of your betrayal, Omega." "I never wrote that," Elena said, her voice shaking but firm. "I have never once acted against this kingdom. Damien, please, look at me. You know me. You know I would never do this." But Damien did not look at her. His jaw was tight, his knuckles white against the arm of his throne. He had loved her once, fiercely and completely, the way only a true mate could. But the letter, the whispers, the carefully placed doubts that had been fed to him for weeks by those around him, had done their work. Trust, once cracked, is easy to shatter completely. "Take her from the kingdom," he said, his voice flat, empty of the warmth she used to know. "The bond is severed, she is no longer welcome here." The words hit her harder than any physical blow could have. The mate bond, the invisible thread that had connected their hearts since the day they met, was torn away in front of the entire court. Elena gasped, clutching her chest as the pain of the severed bond radiated through her body. She caught Damien's eyes for one brief second, and for that second, she thought she saw a flicker of hesitation, but it vanished as quickly as it came, buried beneath his pride and the poison of manipulation. Guards escorted her out of the palace gates that same evening, giving her nothing but a small bag of coins and the clothes on her back. She walked away from the only home she had ever known, carrying not just her broken heart, but 2 innocent lives who had done nothing wrong. The road ahead was long and unforgiving. Elena traveled for days, sleeping in abandoned barns and beneath trees, surviving on what little food she could find. She was weak, exhausted, and terrified, but she refused to let despair take over. She had to survive, not for herself, but for the twins growing inside her. It was in a small village called Hallow Creek, far from the kingdom's borders, that fate finally showed her mercy. An elderly healer named Mara found Elena collapsed near a stream, feverish and barely conscious. Mara took her in without asking questions, nursing her back to health with herbs and quiet kindness. For the first time since her banishment, Elena felt something close to safety. Months later, in a small cottage lit by candlelight, Elena gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. She named them Kian and Lyra. As she held them for the first time, exhaustion and joy mixing together in her tears, she made a silent vow. She would raise them with love, with strength, and she would never let anyone hurt them the way she had been hurt. Years passed in Hallow Creek. Elena, using the skills Mara had taught her, became a respected healer in her own right. Word of her gentle hands and her rare knowledge of herbal medicine spread beyond the village. People traveled from nearby towns just to be treated by her. She built a small but stable life, one brick at a time, never speaking of her past, never mentioning the kingdom she had once called home. Kian and Lyra grew up strong and curious. Kian had his father's sharp instincts and quiet confidence, while Lyra had an uncanny ability to sense the emotions of those around her, a rare gift among Omegas. Neither child knew the truth of their birth. They only knew their mother's warmth, her patience, and the quiet strength she carried like armor. But strength does not mean forgetting. On quiet nights, after the twins had fallen asleep, Elena would sit by the window and let herself remember. She remembered Damien's laughter, the way he used to hold her before everything fell apart. She remembered the sharp sting of betrayal, the cold look in his eyes as he ordered her exile. She had long since stopped crying over it. What remained was not sadness, but a quiet, steady resolve to never again be so easily broken. Back in the kingdom, life had not been kind to Damien. In the years after Elena's banishment, the kingdom grew unstable. Crops failed more often, alliances weakened, and Damien, though he ruled with a firm hand, felt an emptiness he could not explain. The mate bond, though severed, left behind a hollow ache that never fully faded. He told himself it was simply the burden of leadership. Deep down, he knew better. It was Lord Set's own ambition that eventually led to his downfall. Hungry for more power, he grew careless, and one of his own men, racked with guilt, confessed to the royal council. The letter used to condemn Elena had been forged. There had never been any conspiracy. There had never been any betrayal. Elena had been innocent from the very beginning. Damien felt the truth settle over him like a physical weight. He had banished his true mate, the mother of his children, based on nothing but lies and his own blind pride. He immediately ordered a kingdom-wide search, sending trusted riders to every village and town, desperate to find her, desperate for a chance to make things right. It took nearly a year before word finally reached the palace. A healer in Hallow Creek, known for her gentle hands and rare skill, matched the description the riders had been given. Damien did not send guards this time. He rode out himself, alone, driven by a mixture of guilt and desperate hope he had not allowed himself to feel in years. When he arrived in Hallow Creek, the village was peaceful, sunlight spilling over small cottages and fields of wildflowers. He asked a passing villager for directions and was pointed toward a modest home at the edge of the village, a healer's garden blooming beside it. Damien dismounted his horse slowly, his heart pounding in a way it had not in years. He walked toward the door, and before he could knock, it opened. Elena stood in the doorway. She was different now, not broken, not desperate, but calm, composed, and radiant in a way that startled him. Her eyes, once filled with fear and heartbreak the last time he saw her, now held quiet strength. Behind her, two children peered out curiously, a boy and a girl who looked so much like him it stole the breath from his lungs. Damien's face went pale, his lips parted, but no words came out. For a long moment, he simply stared, the weight of everything he had done crashing over him at once. "Elena," he finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. She did not run to him. She did not cry. She simply looked at him, steady and unflinching. "Damien," she said quietly, "it has been a long time." "I did not know," he said, stepping closer, though he stopped himself before crossing into her space uninvited. "The letter was forged. Lord Set," he lied. "I should have trusted you. I should have looked closer. I was wrong, Elena. I was so wrong, and I have regretted it every single day since." Elena studied him for a long moment. She could see the guilt etched into his face, the years of silent suffering behind his eyes. Once, those words would have meant everything to her. Once, she would have thrown herself into his arms without hesitation. But too much had happened. Too much had changed. "I believe you," she said finally. "I believe the truth has come out. But Damien, you did not just banish me. You banished our children before they were even born. You let pride and fear silence the love you claimed to have for me." Damien's throat tightened. He glanced past her toward the two children, still watching cautiously from behind their mother. "Are they?" he started, though he already knew the answer. "Kian and Lyra," Elena said softly. "Your son and daughter." The names struck him like twin blows to the chest. He took a shaking breath, kneeling slightly to be at eye level with them, though he kept his distance, unsure if he had any right to come closer. "Hello," he said gently, his voice thick with emotion. "My name is Damien." Kian studied him with sharp, assessing eyes, so like his own. Lyra, sensing the tension and sorrow radiating from the stranger, tilted her head thoughtfully, but did not look afraid. "Are you the king Mother told us about?" Kian asked bluntly. "The one who sent her away?" Damien flinched, but he did not look away. "Yes," he admitted, "I am, and it was the worst mistake of my life." Elena watched this exchange, her heart caught between old wounds and a small, cautious hope she had not expected to feel again. She had built a life without him, a good life. She did not need him to complete her, but watching him kneel before their children, humbled and honest, stirred something she thought she had buried long ago. "You cannot simply undo years with an apology," she said quietly. "Trust is not something I can hand back so easily." "I know," Damien said. "I am not asking you to forget what happened. I am not even asking you to come back to the kingdom, if that is not what you want. I only ask for the chance to know my children. And if you will allow it, the chance to earn back even a small piece of your trust, one day at a time." Elena was quiet for a long moment, weighing his words carefully. She thought of the years of struggle, the sleepless nights, the fear of raising 2 children alone in an unfamiliar village. She thought of how far she had come, and how she had done it without him. But she also thought of Kian and Lyra, and the questions they would one day ask about their father. "You may stay in the village," she said finally. "For a while. Get to know them. Slowly. No promises beyond that." Relief and gratitude flooded Damien's face. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "That is more than I deserve." Over the following weeks, Damien stayed in Hallow Creek, lodging in the modest village inn, rather than pulling rank or demanding special treatment. He spent his days learning who his children were, listening to Kian's endless questions about swordsmanship and leadership, and sitting patiently with Lyra as she taught him the names of the flowers in her mother's garden. Slowly, carefully, trust began to rebuild, not through grand gestures, but through small, consistent moments. Damien helped repair a fence around Elena's cottage without being asked. He listened more than he spoke. He never once tried to rush Elena into forgiveness, understanding that it was hers to give, not his to demand. One evening, as the sun set golden over the fields, Elena found Damien sitting outside with the twins, listening intently as Kian recounted an elaborate story about a dragon he had supposedly seen near the forest. Lyra giggled beside him, and for a brief moment, Damien looked lighter than she had seen him in years, the heavy weight of guilt momentarily lifted by simple, easy joy. Elena leaned against the doorway, watching quietly. She thought of the woman she had been, broken and abandoned on the road years ago. She thought of the woman she had become, strong, capable, and no longer defined by the pain of her past. And she realized, watching her children laugh with their father, that healing did not mean forgetting. It meant choosing, carefully and on her own terms, what she allowed back into her life. She was not ready to return to the kingdom. She was not certain she ever would be, but she was ready to let her children know their father, and perhaps, in time, to see whether the man before her could truly become someone worthy of the trust he had broken. As the stars began to appear over Hallow Creek, Damien glanced up and caught Elena's eyes. He did not smile, not fully, but there was something gentle and hopeful in his gaze, an unspoken promise to be patient, to prove himself, no matter how long it took. Elena offered him the smallest of nods before turning back inside, leaving the door open behind her, a quiet invitation that spoke louder than any words could. The road to healing would be long, and there were no guarantees of where it would lead. But for the first time in years, Elena felt something she had not allowed herself to feel since the day she was banished. Hope, small and fragile, but real. And as Damien sat beneath the darkening sky, surrounded by the children he almost never knew, he understood that some mistakes could never be fully undone, but given patience, humility, and time, even the deepest wounds could begin to heal.